So I lied. Sort of. I promise by the end of this video you'll be transforming the default cube like a boss. But first we gotta talk about the viewport. You'll notice that our world space axes are color-coded. These colors are universal across all 3D software. Red for X, green for Y, and blue for Z. The easy way to remember is XYZ equals RGB. While most other programs use the Y-axis to represent up and down, Blender uses the Z-axis. Just something to keep in mind if you're transferring models between programs. And if you're wondering why my Z-axis is visible but yours isn't, it's because I turned it on in the Overlays drop-down here. This lets you toggle individual overlay visuals in your scene. Toggle them all at once with the Show Overlays button. Another unique feature of Blender is that it has a number of different modes for specific tasks. We'll get into each of these eventually, but for now we'll stay in object mode. The View menu is a great way to familiarize yourself with the viewport's controls. Keyboard shortcuts are displayed on the right for commands that have them. Keep in mind your mouse has to be in the editor you're trying to affect for keyboard shortcuts to work. On the left side is the toolbar. On the right side are some gizmos for navigating the viewport. Click and drag on the axes to orbit, the magnifying glass to zoom, and the hand to move. Click the camera icon to toggle the active camera view, and the grid icon to toggle between perspective and orthographic view. Personally, I don't use any of these. The top three are taken care of by the mouse, and the bottom two are also keyboard shortcuts. If you want to get rid of them, you can hide them by going to the Gizmos dropdown and unchecking Navigate. With your mouse in the viewport, hit T to hide and show the toolbar. Hit N to show and hide the N panel. The first thing you'll see in the N panel are the transform values for the selected object. Selected objects are highlighted orange, with the object origin appearing as an orange dot. If it's not already, right-click the default cube to select it. If you look in the Properties panel, the object properties should be displayed by default. This will also display the selected object's transform values. These are the cube's location, rotation, and scale, each with an X, Y, and Z value. Note that while the location and rotation are all 0 by default, the scale values are 1, as in 100%. There are several ways to transform an object. The first is to click and drag left or right, or click and type an exact value into these number boxes. Zero them out again to bring the cube back to center. The next is to use the transform tools. There are separate tools for move, rotate, and scale, but I prefer the transform tool, as it allows you to easily access all three. The red, green, and blue gizmos will transform the object along the corresponding axes. The white circle in the middle will rotate based on the current view. You'll notice that while the cube rotates, the gizmo doesn't. That's because by default, the transform orientation is set to global space, which means regardless of the cube's orientation, it'll be transformed along the world axes. Switch to local space and the gizmo will snap to the cube object's orientation. Now you can transform it along its own axes. I prefer to use keyboard shortcuts for transforms. T is already used by the toolbar, so we use G for grab, R for rotate, and S for scale. The object will be tied to your mouse movement until you right-click to cancel or left-click to confirm. To transform along a specific axis, just type that axis after the transform shortcut. For instance, GX will move the cube along the x-axis, RY will rotate on the y-axis, and SZ will scale on the z-axis. S-Shift-Z will ignore the z-axis and scale on the x and y-axes together. To clear transforms, hit Alt-G, Alt-R, and Alt-S. As you transform the object, the value you're adding to its transform values is displayed at the top left. Hold Ctrl to snap to the grid in even increments. Just like you can type a specific axis, you can also type a specific value. GX5 moves the cube forward 5 units on the x-axis. S.5 reduces the cube to half its scale on all axes. Again, right-click to cancel and left-click or hit Enter to confirm. You might be wondering what this little white and red circle with crosshairs is. That's the 3D cursor, which as far as I'm aware is unique to Blender. It's super useful. Left-click anywhere in your scene to place it. You can set your transform pivot point to the 3D cursor, and now your object will rotate around it. You can also use it to place an object at an exact point. For instance, let's say your cube is a character and you want a POV shot. Hit Shift-S to bring up the snap options and click Cursor to select it. Now right-click on your camera and hit Shift-S Selection to Cursor. Hit Alt-R and then RX90, and now it's facing forward. That's a lot easier than trying to eyeball it, right? Use the Add menu to add a new mesh or two, and practice transforming them until you're comfortable with all the methods we just covered. In the next video, we'll go into edit mode.